Look, I'm pleased to be given the opportunity to respond to the budget here today, and I will contain my remarks specifically in the area of housing, the housing planning and local government area that I know Minister Phelan is involved in, and also an area that I was appointed to as spokesperson for my party Fianna Fáil in May of this year. And since that time in May, I've endeavoured, along with my party, to be constructive in our approach and in our dealings with government. Because I think on the housing, I don't think it, I know it, with regard to housing, we are in the midst of a housing crisis that's bordering on a national catastrophe. And this crisis affects every family in this state, and it affects them in different ways. First and foremost, it affects the 10,000 plus people who have no home to go to. It affects the 4,000 kids that are sleeping in hotels, emergency accommodation, cars and Garda stations. And it also affects the thousands of other people that are sleeping on couches and blow-up beds in their parents' houses. But then it affects further the tens of thousands of working people who, at this moment in time, or indeed up to this budget, under the stewardship of this government in the last, had no hope of owning or purchasing their own home, and ended up paying exorbitant rents of $2,500 in some instances per month rent for, in some instances, substandard accommodation. So what we've tried to do, and what Fianna Fáil have tried to do in our approach to this budget, is to bring about some real policy solutions in that area. And I was looking back about where we started, if I take social housing provision, that before we entered confidence and supply in budget 2016, the budget allocation for social housing was 430 million. Fianna Fáil have a track record in delivering social homes and public housing and actually building houses. And what we have done in that period of time is to insist and to pressurise government to increase that budget as it is today, post this budget, to 1.34 billion. That's a 300% increase in provision for social homes for real people in this country. And when you look at the scale of the crisis, we have about 72,000 families, and growing every day, waiting on our social housing waiting list. We have another 36 to probably 40,000 families on housing assistance payment, and I'll return to that as well, all waiting for permanent housing. So I am pleased and satisfied that we did secure nearly an extra 300 million, or a 25% increase in the allocation for public homes. But I think now, and I think everyone will agree, it's not about money, not even necessarily about policy, it's actually about delivery. And it's actually about building those homes and housing those families. So, coupled with that, one of the Fianna Fáil proposals was to lift this local authority, and I use the word lightly, discretionary cap. And I know there was some support from the government benches on that. And that was raised from 2 million to 6 million. It's a start. 2 million effectively means, Minister, and you'll know this, that any public housing scheme being built pretty much in the Greater Dublin area, but most of the country, of over 8 houses, has to be referred to the Customs House for our famous 4-stage process, 59-week of kicking it between department and local authority. I don't think any of us want that. So at least with the increase to 6 million, that will mean, generally speaking, on average, schemes of up to about 30 homes will go through a 1-stage process, give more autonomy to the local authorities. Now, I'll be very honest and on the record of the House, Fianna Fáil wants to go further than that. We want to lift that cap to 10 million. I think that's something we will do, and further when we are, and if we are in government, that we would look to give more autonomy to the local authorities and then hold them to account if they don't deliver. But what I want to see is an end to the blame game between Minister Murphy and the local authorities. That one blaming each other, and the Minister, now and again when he's under pressure, will decide to throw his toys out of the pram and blame every local authority for not delivering. We're all responsible. He's responsible. At the end of the day, he is the line minister. But I put it to you that everyone in this House is responsible as well to bring forward policy that will make things better. And that's why, on the affordable housing scheme, that is a really important priority for Fianna Fáil, because we believe that for people to have a stake in their community and in their country, they want to have a stake in it, they need to have a home in it, they need to be able to put down roots in it, they need to have a secure environment to do so. And the best way of doing that is by owning your own home, in my view, at least doing that. So the provision of €300 million over the next 3 years towards a real affordable housing scheme for working people is something that I and my colleagues, Michael McGrath and Barry Cowan in particular, have pushed for. And I'm pleased to see that that is in this year's budget. But, again, I would say, and it's a pity none of our colleagues from Sinn Féin are here, because they seem to have a major problem with maths on this. They reckon Owen O'Brien, their housing guru, effectively saw this as an increase of 25 million in 1 year. Owen obviously didn't read the detail of it properly. It's actually a real increase in 1 year of 75 million, actually closer to 80 million, and a new 100 million for the next 2 years, totalling 300 million. And what we need to see now is delivery of those homes. And initially that will be on state-owned land. 9 local authorities have come back, including my own in Fingal, have answered the call from the department. So I need to see this scheme starting in 2019. It has the potential, with this funding, to deliver about 7,500 homes for working people. Fianna Fáil would like to see that expanded. I would like to see an expansion of the Part 5 as well on affordable housing, and I want to see the income limits actually increased. I think we've got to look at them again. The 75,000 upper limit for a couple in many areas is too low. We've working couples earning more than that, but are paying exorbitant rent, are paying childcare costs, have no ability to save. That needs to be done. So look, we'll be watching that really closely. The regulation for this affordable housing scheme should come to the House within the next 2 weeks, and I want to see that happen. And I want to see that happen quickly and the scheme established, and that we start building these homes for people. As I said, we would expand it further if we were in government, but we are not. But we're trying to use our position here in a constructive way. And I would say to those who aren't in the chamber right now, Sinn Féin, Labour, Solidarity, PPP, that I did bring forward an affordable housing scheme back in May of this year that was debated in this House. And for some reason that they can't actually explain, government voted against it, Fine Gael opposed it, but it was defeated because Sinn Féin, Solidarity, Labour and others decided that they were going to vote against affordable housing for working people. So we've lost 7-8 months on that, and that to me is a matter of regret. But now I want to move forward and see it implemented, and I would like to see other parties actually coming forward with real and realistic proposals and suggestions for implementation. Because I know, and I'm sure both of you ministers do and colleagues in the House here, that people are sick and tired of housing being used as a football here and a political football. They want to see results. They care about the fact that there's 10,000 people without homes, that there's 4,000 kids sleeping in hotels. I've met mothers who have explained to me in great detail how when their kids are getting out of the car coming back from school, that they get changed in the car because they don't want to walk into a hotel with a school uniform on. And the reason they don't want to do that is because they know at 6 and 7 years of age that the other guests in the hotel know that if they're wearing a school uniform there, they're more than likely living and sleeping in that hotel. None of us want to see that happen. So I called a number of weeks ago for an establishment of a time-bound task force on homelessness, and particularly family homelessness. So I was pleased to see in this budget, again at our insistence, but to be fair, with agreement of government, of an extra 60 million this year towards tackling homelessness and for emergency accommodation in this year's budget, and an increase up to about 130 million for next year. But at the end of the day, in all of the areas of rent, of affordable homes, of public housing, the big single issue is supply, and the other issue is affordability. And unless we get supply back up and going, we're never going to get to grips with this crisis. So government needs to show ambition in this regard, and the Dáil needs to show ambition in that regard as well. The Land Development Agency, yes, an agency is required. The way in which this agency appears to be constructed, in my opinion, will mean that we won't deliver a home within about 4 years. We can't wait 4 years. We need to do that. I was looking back at figures on home ownership, and we've slipped to the lowest rate of home ownership since 1971. The average age of a person now buying their own home in actually the last figures we have are 2017, was about 35 years of age. If you go back to 1991, the average age was 26. But home ownership rate has now fallen to just over 2/3. So it is a problem, and it's a problem for many working people that they're paying rent, and they don't see any hope of getting out of that. We do also need to stabilise rents, and we need to ensure that the bad word that is landlords, that some will bandy about, that landlords should be hung from every tree all over this country, is not a practical measure, nor indeed is it something that should happen. There are many good landlords and good individual landlords in this market. I have a concern of the amount of corporate institutional landlords moving in as well, that are now own large swathes of this city and other cities around the country. But we do need to ensure that individual landlords stay in the market, because they are part of the solution. But we need to look at in some way, incentivising longer-term leases to strengthen security of tenure for tenants, and that can be done through the finance bill, with additional measures that we've been discussing to ensure that we keep landlords in the market, because they do have a role in this, and they are a part of the solution, not the major part. People owning their own homes, and public housing on public land is the major solution. So, in conclusion, I'll ask Ceann Comhairle, there are many aspects of the housing budget that I welcome. Many aspects of it are Fianna Fáil proposals, I am glad to say, and Fianna Fáil policy positions. But what it is about now, in this year coming into 2019, is implementation. We need to see delivery on the ground. We need to see boots on the ground, and sites started and people housed. Go raibh maith.